Baldur's Gate 3 has some genius encounters, and you can take those ideas and drop them directly into your games to create some really memorable experiences at the table. And I can guarantee you your players will never know where you got your inspiration from. Whether you played the game or not, you can use these ideas. I'll be walking through 5 of the most creative encounters in the game and showing you exactly how to adapt them and use them in your next session. I'm also going to show you an excellent gift for the D&D person in your life, or a little treat for yourself, from the sponsor of today's video, Brass Dragon Bistro. Welcome to Baldur's Gate. I'm Kelly, and Baldur's Gate's actually what they used to call me in college. I'm late to the party, but for the last year, I've been playing through Baldur's Gate 3 with some friends. Although I've been playing it for fun, I did have a secret ulterior motive, and that was to mine ideas for my own D&D games. Because there are some truly creative encounter mechanics in this game that I haven't seen in any pre-written D&D adventure or campaign. The first encounter, and my absolute favorite because it creates a whole adventure arc out of one simple mechanic, is the Mystic Carrion encounter. Mystic Carrion is an undead mummy lord that you can find in Act 3. He's been creating undead servants, and now those undead servants have escaped because they want to be free. But that's not the genius part. The genius part is that Mystic Carrion has, for lack of a better term, horcruxed himself. He's hidden away different organs. Each of these organs is tied to an ability on his stat block. Destroying each of the organs takes away one of his abilities. This is kind of like destroying a lich's phylactery, but way cooler. Why? Because it puts the decision making directly into your player's hands. Destroying a lich's phylactery is one task and it's mandatory, otherwise the lich will just keep coming back. But with this mechanic, the players can choose how many of these items to destroy to take power away from Mystic Carrion. Mystic Carrion does have one mandatory item, otherwise he'll keep coming back to life, which is his heart, but otherwise the players can choose how many of the items they want to destroy before facing off against him. So how do you use this in your game? Just pick a monster from your monster book of choice that has multiple abilities and traits. It won't really work if you pick a boring monster with nothing but a rend attack, so pick something interesting. Now tie each of its abilities, except its most basic attack, to an object. Then scatter these objects in different locations behind other challenges like puzzles, smaller combat encounters, social interactions, etc. For example, the Night Hag from the basic rules would be a great monster to use for this because it has lots of abilities and traits. You can either flavor it as a hag or flavor it as any humanoid who has done some sort of soul magic to gain these cursed abilities. Maybe they draw their power from pieces of their own body that they had to harvest and sacrifice to some cursed deity. And if you don't want to go quite so dark with it, they could also be drawing their power from runes that have been carved into bones or something similar like that, and then scattered around the material plane. Now you just go through the stat block and assign different parts to different objects. Certain things can be additive and certain things can be subtractive. The idea is that the monster should be too challenging for the party at full power. You can give them 50% extra HP and tie that to one object, give them a 2 AC boost and tie that to a different object, then something like magic resistance and their limited use spells can be tied to other objects. I actually had so much fun with this concept that I came up with a whole list of monster traits and actions that you can add to any stat block and tie to a destructible object. If you want to check it out, it's on my Patreon at the I Appreciate You tier, and it's linked down below. Now, all this only works if your players know that they have the option to destroy these artifacts. If you plan all of this and then just hope they figure it out, well, that's a lot of wasted work for you. It's important to seed this information to your players. Straight up have an NPC tell them that legend says this BBEG made a deal with a deity and they draw their power from hidden artifacts. Don't be subtle with your initial clues that this is an option, otherwise your players will surely just ignore it. The other thing you need to telegraph is that this monster is very scary at full power and might be an unwinnable fight. And there you have it, a full D&D adventure arc where your players have to hunt down cursed relics that take away a boss's abilities and then fight and defeat that boss. Alright, before we talk about an encounter that has one of my favorite uses of resistances, I want to show you one that requires almost no extra work on your part. You could drop this into almost any boss encounter to instantly make it more dynamic. Just beef up your monster and then add a huge weapon that your players can use to do big damage. This is based on the Adamantine Forge encounter where you fight Grim, a massive forge golem. Grim is extremely tough, has a ton of HP, and also has a bunch of resistances. However, the players have one major advantage, the Forge Hammer. Players can use an action to activate the Forge Hammer, and then it slams down into a specific spot on the map. Grim always pursues the last character that attacked it, so it becomes a game of positioning Grim in the right spot and activating the hammer. There's an additional twist with a custom condition, but for our purposes, I think that overcomplicates it. So how do you bring this into your game? Well, you can devise any trap that fits your environment, but personally, I'm a big fan of falling rocks. It's a very fun joke to give your players a lever that makes rocks fall to kill their enemies. You can use the improvising trap damage table to figure out how much damage the trap deals. Using a beefy monster with lower intelligence works best because it could just chase whichever character attacked it last. If you have a more intelligent boss, you might need to think of a more creative reason that it's going after a certain character. Like maybe if they're a fiend, then doing radiant damage sends them into some kind of uncontrollable frenzy and they need to attack the creature that dealt the radiant damage.
Thirsty?
For a level 5 party, I'd probably use something like a fire giant stat block, except give it 500 HP. Then play it as low intelligence and have it go after whoever attacked it last. I'd make the trap deal 10d10 bludgeoning damage to a specific area on the map, and have it recharge on initiative 20. And then I'd let my players get creative with how they want to lure and trap the giant in the damage zone. Before we talk about that encounter that uses resistances, and an incredibly spooky encounter where you can give your players a taste of their own medicine, I want to show you these awesome D&D treats from the sponsor of today's video, Brass Dragon Bistro. These are edible gelatinous cubes. They even have tiny edible skulls inside. They come in 4 flavors: goodberry, blue raspberry, fire fruit, and ginger. These are such a fun treat to break out of the table, and you can even use them as little minis. Brass Dragon Bistro also makes these cosmic caramels, which come in Champion's Chai, Elven Espresso, and 2 new flavors, Magnificent Mocha and Halfling Hot Cocoa. If you've got a long combat stretching late into the night, the Elven Espresso will give you a little pick-me-up to finish the fight. All the candy comes with fun homebrew rules inside the packaging, so you can use these treats inside your game world. Brass Dragon Bistro are a woman-owned small business, and they use responsibly sourced ingredients and sustainable packaging. In my group, we take turns hosting and bringing snacks, and I'm so excited to break these out of the table. I used to think chocolate coins were the most themed snack you could get, but having an actual D&D monster in candy form blows that out of the water. Check them out at the link below and use the code POWERWORDDISCOUNT to get 10% off your first order. Thistlebold is a huge undead brewer from Act 2. He's got a big keg strapped to his back, and he can drink his own brews through tubes strapped to his face. The details of this encounter are a little gross, but bear with me because the mechanics are really cool, and you can adapt this to make it much less gross and much cooler. Thistlebolt starts the encounter with the numb condition, which gives him immunity to piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning damage. Then, depending on the type of damage he's hit with, he vomits that type of damage. The idea being that by damaging his brew with a certain type of damage, you've tainted it and made him sick, and now he vomits that type of damage. He can also summon imps of that type as minions. Each time he vomits, his condition progresses on a track. Once it reaches blacked out, he's vulnerable to all types of damage. Then he recovers and goes back to the numb condition, and the cycle repeats. So how do you add this into your game, and potentially make it less gross? With potions of breath weapon.
Yes. And it's the choice of a new generation.
There is a potion of fire breath in the DM's guide, but we're gonna modify it a bit. Our potions give you resistance to a certain damage type and let you deal that damage type as a breath weapon. After that breath weapon is unleashed, mephits are spawned from the potion remnants. However, using multiple of these potions in a row is dangerous. Taking 3 in a row gives a creature the saturated condition, as the potions all interact inside them, causing them to be vulnerable to all types of damage until the start of their next turn. After that turn, the potion effects fade and they can start taking potions again. So just pick any humanoid monster and give them a ton of these potions in different damage types, and then track their progress with how many potions they take, and make sure your players know that they're progressing on this condition track. If you're liking these, hit the subscribe button. If I hit 100k, I get an ASI, and I'm gonna put both my points into my mustache stat, so who knows what'll happen. Before we get to the spooky encounter, and one that kind of flips the first Mystic Carrion encounter on its head, I need to make an important distinction clear between these video game mechanics and our D&D adaptions. In a video game, if you die, you can retry the combat, learning from your mistakes and adjusting your strategy. That means it's fine to use secret mechanics that can be deadly and surprise the players with them. But in D&D, death is usually permanent. There's no playing a combat a second time, so the most important thing you can do when adapting any of these strategies is to drop hints for your players in-game about what's coming up. There's no need to surprise them with these mechanics. In fact, it'll be way more fun if they know what's coming and they get to prepare. So be generous with the information ahead of time. You're not ruining anything by giving too much away, you're actually just making it more fun. Alright, one of the encounters from Act 3 is the Murder Tribunal against Sarevok Anchev. Sarevok is a terrifying servant of Baal, and quite a tough boss to fight. Some D&D encounter advice that I've given before and that I've seen elsewhere is to tie your boss's power to minions. That way your players can defeat the minions first to make fighting the boss easier, but this encounter reverses that. Sarevok has either 3 or 4 allies with him, depending on some choices you made, and each of these allies gives him a boon. One casts Warding Bond on him, another casts Haste on him, the third casts Slow on the party, and the fourth, if present, has an ability that kicks in only when they die. These allies cast spells on Sarevok to give him a boost, but if they die, he absorbs their boon and it becomes permanent. It's such a clever little twist. This means that your players need to mitigate the damage of these allies and take them out of the fight without killing them. They need to defeat Sarevok first and then the minions. Oh, and the fourth ally's ability? It's a deadly one. If the fourth ally dies, Sarevok deals max damage on all of his attacks. Brutal. If you tell your players about the consequences of killing these allies in-game ahead of time and you show them the HP as it ticks down, it would create some great dramatic tension at the table. I said the Adamantine Forge was the easiest to implement, but actually I think it might be this one. Just design an encounter with minions, give each of the minions the ability to cast one of the spells that I mentioned above, and then if the minion dies, make that spell's effect on the boss permanent. Easy. Alright, let's give your players a taste of their own medicine. They think they're so great, strutting around with their sneak attack and their high-level spells. Well, how about they fight themselves? Or at least, versions of themselves. In Act 2, during the trial of the Gauntlet of Shar, there's an unusual encounter where you have to fight the shadow version of your party. In the game, the abilities are pretty much the same, so you should just print out your players' character sheets and have them fight themselves, right? No, definitely don't do that. In 5e, player characters have high damage output and low HP, whereas monsters typically have higher HP but relatively lower damage output. But you can just look through the monster manual or basic rules for humanoid monsters that are an approximate match for each of your players. For example, the mage for a wizard, the gladiator for a fighter, the assassin for a rogue. You get the idea. Then you just do everything else with flavor.
Oh, at Flavortown?
Especially if your players have go-to moves that they often use, just take the flavor of those moves and combos and describe that as the attack from the monster. This kind of encounter has tons of story potential in the aftermath as well. If you just drop this encounter on your players, the natural next question is, who made these shadow versions of us? How did they get them so accurate? Are we being spied on? And the best part is, you don't even have to know what the answer is. Just wait and start listening to their wild theories, pick your favorite, and make that one come true. There were a lot of ideas in here. Which of these are you going to try first? But before you start designing your encounter, maybe you should check out this video here for a bunch of tips about making any combat more dynamic, including making some terrain change cards. I appreciate you.